morning and welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Adrianne Pasquarelli, Special Projects Editor and Senior Reporter at Ad Age. As you know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Today, we'll be talking with Alyson Griffin, Head of Marketing at State Farm, about her experience as a breast cancer survivor. Hi, Alyson. Thank you so much for joining us and telling your story.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before we get started, I wanted to remind our viewers that you have any questions or comments to share, feel free to leave them in our social channels and we'll do our best to get to them during the conversation. So, Alyson, your battle with cancer dates back years, but you're only choosing now to talk publicly about it. Can you tell us a little bit about why?
Yeah, I appreciate it. This is the first time, and it's funny. I speak publicly a lot. I was just at ad week last week in New York and on stages and stuff, and this one a little more overwhelming, I think. I'm speaking about it now because I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016, and that was after experiencing it as a teenager through my mom, who was diagnosed in 1985. And it's something that I've lived with for a really long time, meaning as a kid through her, and then as an adult myself. And it never felt like the right time, but I've been at State Farm now for 2.5 years, and there's something about the company, something about the Midwest, maybe the purpose-driven nature of insurance, our mission being helping more people in more ways, the women in leadership, and the openness to being who you are and bringing your whole self to work in a way that the technology industry wasn't, which is where I was for about 29 years before this. And so it felt like all of the ingredients were in the right place to say, I think I can share this. And then I'll say one last thing, and get back to you there. The more I privately talk about it, the more and more women leaders that I find who've been coping with this quietly and secretly. And I wanted to demystify it a little bit, and also to say there's probably more people around who can help be a support system if you find yourself or a family member or someone you care about in the situation.
So, your experience did not occur when you were at State Farm, but you were at HP, is that right?
I was, exactly. I was an executive at HP in marketing, had been there for over 16 years. And so it was, if anyone who knows the sort of culture of HP, it's in a great way everything you would expect. They were loving and caring and supportive and all those things. So I don't mean to have sort of said anything different when in my opening about like the tech industry, but HP was wrapping its arms around me and gave me what I needed, which was some time, and the ability to kind of bond with my family and cope and figure out what we were going to do. And HP was such that I could do that. But it was still something that, while some people knew what was going on, most did not.
What kind of marketing work were you doing for HP at the time, and how did your experience impact some of that work?
I was leading, and by the way, I'll tell the viewers, we had login issues with my computer. I think that's a State Farm thing. So I'm holding my phone up here. So when it moves a little bit, I
Sure.
apologize. That's me. It's not you. So at HP, I was vice president of marketing globally for the PC business, commercial and consumer PCs globally. And I was one, as I was going through, the lead up to getting a diagnosis, it doesn't just happen overnight. At least it didn't for me. So I started getting mammograms at the age of 30, and normally it's 40. But my doctor started me at the age of 30 because of my mom and the history that my family had. So I knew something might be going on for a while when they said, it was like maybe 2 years before, they said, "Hey, why don't you come every 6 months?" And they said, Just fatty tissue, fatty tissue. Don't worry, nothing to be alarmed about." But come every 6 months. And then it was, maybe we should do a biopsy. And then it was, maybe we should do an MRI, right? So my point is, the day of the diagnosis, if you will, was a shock. But because of living through it with my mom, I kind of always prepared myself at one point it may be something that happens. And because of those steps, if you will, that were going on month after month, and sort of this crescendo of, okay, now it's not 6 months, now we're doing all these testings, now we're biopsying, now we need an MRI, all that kind of stuff. It didn't, I admit it wasn't a complete surprise. So from a work perspective, I just kind of did what maybe a lot of moms do, or a lot of people do. I just ignored it. I mean, I didn't ignore it. I was taking care of it medically, but from a work perspective, nothing changed. I don't think anyone had any idea at all that had been going through this for many months.
Wow, so you were able to kind of compartmentalize and kind of
Yes.
separate from the health and personal from the work you were doing professionally.
And I did it, even like my boys were teenagers at the time. They were 15 and 13 when I was diagnosed. So, that year, let's say before, I didn't share this with them. This was something my husband was aware of. But I was compartmentalizing it completely. I mean, it wasn't leaking out in any way. I didn't want to scare them.
And how challenging was that for you from a career perspective? I mean, what were some of the biggest challenges during that lead up to the diagnosis and then of course during the treatment as well?
You know what was really strange, and HP is not aware of this. I was actually, strangely, interviewing with Intel at the time, and had no idea. HP didn't know that, so this is a little odd to share in this way. Although obviously I went to Intel after HP, so everybody knows at some point that happened. But it was weird timing, and what I mean. So I wasn't sharing anything like that at all from an HP perspective. I was doing great, work was fine, all of that kind of stuff. But in my mind, I was grappling with, had already been in the process of a very long interview cycle. And I'll even share, I'll never forget, right, as these things, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, but April 21st, I remember like very clearly. On April 20th, I happened to have my last, I made it to the final two candidates for an Intel position, and made it to the face-to-face interview, and went, and I had already had the biopsy, and I was still going through the Intel stuff because I didn't know. They kept telling me fatty tissue, fatty tissue. I don't know. Anyone who's been through this may know that that is like, don't worry, don't worry. This, we see this all the time in breast tissue. It's probably nothing. It's probably nothing. And was still kind of the thing. So it was, do I not continue the interviews with Intel? But the 20th of April, obviously I won't forget, I had my face-to-face interviews, did well. And then the next day is when the doctor said, I need you to come into the office. And of course, I looked at my husband and said, you don't just come into the office for not a diagnosis. So I went in, and he shared it with me, and it took me a day to process that and deal with my family, which we can talk about in a second. But to finish the work thought, that next day I called Intel and pulled my application and my candidacy. I shared with them that I had no idea, which I didn't, that this would happen. And I felt terrible. I knew there were final two candidates. I assumed that meant the other candidate was amazing, and didn't know if I was in position one or position two at the time anyway, and just thought, okay, great. I won't be leaving them in the lurch, and I'll handle this with HP. And I felt really good and safe about HP because I had been there for so long. And by the way, my mom was a 43-year employee of Hewlett Packard, so I grew up with HP. So I felt very, and they were so supportive of her in her breast cancer journey back in 1985. And so I had no fear that they would do exactly the most wonderful things, which they did, of support. And so it was, one of those situations where so much was going through my mind. Intel, HP, my family, the diagnosis, my mom. What do I say to my mom? It was going to crush her. She never wanted me to have to go through this. She always wanted to protect me from it, which is funny because that's not a thing you can protect somebody from. And so work and personal and family and diagnosis was all in a very strange, mixed up point in April of 2016.
And then, so you decided to stay with HP, and what was Intel's response then? Because you eventually then did switch, but that was some time later. Is that what
Yeah,
happened?
not yeah. So what they said was, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." Intel acted just the way, HP did, really. Like, "Thank you for sharing with us, and we wish you health and love and support and all of those really good things." And I had really a great connection with the male recruiter, actually, at Intel. I really liked him. We got, we shared a lot about a journey and stuff, and I was really sad to have to tell him I was pulling out because I was excited about the opportunity anyway, but he was so loving and supportive. And I say that here and pause and point that out specifically because I didn't expect to get that from a man that I didn't know. And who knows, maybe he had something like this in his family, but he was so compassionate and lovely. And I just said to Intel, I really, really am interested in what you guys, the direction you're headed, and still think I can make a contribution. And gosh, I'd love for you to think of me in the future, is sort of how we left it. And then with HP, obviously that was not something that I shared with them. And just did a typical, I'm a long tenured employee here and I'm having a medical issue and need to take whatever steps to take to get medical leave. And of course they were amazing about it.
How did the company culture at HP play a role in the experience, the
Very
treat?
family, and like I said, I grew up with HP and knew the HP way was prevalent in Silicon Valley. It was a very family loving, especially for tech. It's very rare. HP, I haven't been there in many years now, but um, compared to the rest in the industry, they were a little bit different and a little more consensus driven, loving, supportive. We're together, and that is exactly how they treated me. There was no question about anything other than get better, and we're here to support you. I really, I didn't think about it at all in that way, because I knew that legitimately HP was there to support me.
That's so helpful to have that kind of security and at least one thing less to worry about during that
Well, yeah, and
experience.
that's how I feel about State Farm. State Farm and HP are very similar in that type of culture. Very, very, we're in this together and we're a family more than other friends that I've had at other enterprises or people that I've seen firsthand. I also started my life on the agency side and worked with many, many, many accounts, as you would in agency life, and not many corporate cultures. And not today. State Farm, I think, is now even different today, probably even than HP with its with the way its purpose driven culture. But yeah, HP was great, and there was just no, that was not a consideration for me, that there would be any issue with work.
That's that's super helpful. Well, what has State Farm's response been to you talking about your illness publicly today?
So it's today. So a couple of months ago, I knew October was coming, and I've thought about, ever since I was old enough to know Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Um, and of course, I was 14 going on 15 when my mom was diagnosed in 85. And she was 40 years old at the time of her diagnosis, which is very young. And at that time, I don't know if many will recall, but there were supermodels getting silicone implants more cosmetically, and they were bursting and people were dying. And it was really scary time. Like, a breast cancer diagnosis wasn't as known as it is today. And the reconstruction path was like, oh my gosh, for my mom, scary. And for me as a little girl, watching her and kind of growing up with this with her was very scary. Um, I've thought about it my whole life, or since that time. And then a couple of months ago, I talked to Kristen Cook, who's my leader, and she is just an amazing support, whom I very much appreciate. And I can't express the safety I feel and the support I feel with her. And a couple of months ago, I said, "Hey, Kristen, I know you know this about me." I had shared it with her privately, but Breast Cancer Awareness Month is coming and I'm kind of thinking about it, but I don't know how would State Farm react, or this is the first time that I've ever even considered speaking about it just publicly. And she immediately, I remember we were at her home. I went over for like an evening meeting, and we knew we had a ton of stuff to get through. And so she just said, "Come over to the house, we'll grab a bite to eat and kind of not work too late, but no distractions of the office, and let's just bang through some things." And in that, just one on one, just the two of us in a very safe, private environment, I felt like I could ask her, "Hey, what do you think State Farm would think if I wanted to talk about this?" And immediately she said, she put her arms around me, and then it's emotional. And she said, "It's, we support you. Um, that's what we do." And the emotion for me is not about the cancer. It's about the feeling the first time that it was me and the love rather than work. And she said, "Think about it." I knew I had a couple months to figure out if I really was going to do this or not. And I'm sorry for the emotion. It's just, I never felt that before.
Yeah, having that support is so crucial and so important, and it's so lucky because not everyone can count on having support from an employer, from colleagues like that.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrianne Pasquarelli with Ad Age, and I'm joined by Alyson Griffin of State Farm. A reminder, if you have any questions, please put them in the social feeds. Well, Allison, we've recently seen more and more high-profile executives share their vulnerability, discussing personal challenges with mental health and caregiving and other things that are really quite sensitive. Why do you think that embracing this vulnerability is important for the workplace and for advertising and marketing industries in specifically?
It's funny. I'm a marketer, so I study the generations. And I think part of what's paving the way today is Gen Z and their openness. I have two boys, 22 and 20 now. And I kind of have to understand that generation anyway. And so watching them embrace people's uniqueness, differences, challenges, mental health being an issue, climate crisis, or what, and I don't mean to point any of them out, but just the generation seems to be very open to sharing. And I think as more and more of that is infiltrating corporate America, meaning we're hiring more and more of younger folks these days, we're being taught. I'm a Gen X, right? And I'll be 53, and being taught that it's okay to say who you are fully, to bring your full self to relationships, to even to work. Maybe not every job and maybe not everything, but I really believe that this generation has ushered in the permission for people to be open. That's kind of one thing. And therefore, people like me, I'm, tenured, I'll say. I've been around for 30 years. I've seen a lot and experienced a lot, and know how hush hush things have been in the past, and know how certain issues, especially in the workplace, are dictated by what used to be norms. But it's my job as a leader to pave the way, to show I'm listening to you, new generation who's coming in. And not only are you teaching me how to do better social media for my marketing, go with me here, but also that you're showing us how to behave as leaders, and what to support, what to expect, and what to champion. And we're listening, we hear you.
Do you think COVID is also playing a role in impacting how we address such issues? Do you think
Oh,
it played a role
yeah.
at all?
Oh, I'm sure COVID, health too, right? I mean, that brought your health first, front and center, where it never really was before, I don't think, in this, obviously not in this way. And so being healthy, caring about health, seeing other people's health matters, for sure, because of COVID. And so, so it's been an interesting kind of transition. And like I said, look, not every company is going to feel exactly the way State Farm does about these things, and not everybody will feel ready. I wasn't ready. I've been at State Farm for 2.5 years. Why didn't I do this last year, for example? And I don't know why. I can't explain it. It was that I didn't have that kitchen conversation with Kristen 2 years ago. I had it this August, and it paved the way for me to think about how to give support. And the other thing, the more people that I've shared this with, the more people who have shared, "Oh yeah, me too." And it's just like, "What? I mean, I never would have thought you look so healthy," right? That was things people used to say to me, "Alyson, you're so healthy," or "You're so together." And it's like, yeah, cancer's not because you're not together or you don't try to live a healthy, active lifestyle. It's not about that.
Well, as companies are trying to figure out the new norm when it comes to being in the office or working from home, how should marketing departments and agencies think about the health of their talent?
I mean, health is all you have, right? So I used to think about it in the context of your family matters, and listen, if you've got to take your kids somewhere, if a family member is sick, if you're not feeling well, if you need a break, all those, I'll just sort of say family and health related things. It's like you got to take care of you. No one's going to think about you first, right? In a job. Not meaning that jobs don't think about people, because of course we care, but it's we're going to whatever product launch or industry deadline or things like that, right? That's what a job is. And so if you don't, like, raise your hand and speak up, you need to, and that matters. And I've always thought that mattered. Pick your kids up, for example, that kind of thing. But now, and maybe because of COVID, you're making me think about that differently right here on the spot. Health is a thing that we've got to normalize and think about and make way for. And it matters, because if somebody isn't healthy, they can't bring their best self to work, right? And healthy means happy. Healthy means with their family. Healthy means a lot of things, not just can't cancer or no cancer. And so we're not going to get the best out of our people if we're not getting the best out of our people, and that matters.
What role do you think brands can play to destigmatize cancer and kind of bring more awareness to the issue and the issues of health and support to those in need?
I think brands, people who will talk about it, so that it's not like a under the muffled, breast cancer or something. Especially that, I think men don't want to say it. It feels not sexualized, but there's something about that there too. And it's uncomfortable. But it's not uncomfortable. I think so. Just talking about it, making space for it, celebrating it internally with employees, giving people time off to volunteer for. That's a big thing in the State Farm culture, not just for cancer, for anything that you are involved in or care about. We want volunteer days to happen, things like that. So brands can do that and pave that way. But I want to say another thing that is really important, especially for men. And for me, it was mother of boys. So I took the BRCA gene test. And I didn't know if I had it. My mom never took the test, but because she had breast cancer and then I had it, and we were both so young, she was 40, I was 45, going on 46. Um, it was like, oh, wow, we're kind of on the young side and healthy and didn't have other parameters that might have been obvious indicators for cancer. And so I kind of thought, oh man, maybe we have the gene, but I didn't, which we think means she doesn't. And I say that to say they wanted me to test because of my boys, because breast cancer in men of families who have the BRCA gene is real, and men do not do mammograms. And breast cancer is mostly 100%. It's not 100, so it's mostly, I don't know the exact percentage, very, very, very curable with early detection. And they caught mine and watched it so early. Like I said, I had 15 years of mammograms on file. And then, like I had said, they did 6 months, 6 month, right? So they had a lot. They were watching this thing grow. And therefore, I was able to very successfully get through it. And now I'm here today, going on 10 years later. It's more like 8. Um, but for my kids, I thought, what if my boys have the BRCA gene and they don't know and I don't know? Because they won't have the opportunity to catch it early. And I think that's a real thing that no one talks about. And so I'm grateful that I don't have it, and it was a big relief for me, and that I didn't have to make that a thing for their lives. But it's important.
Yeah, the genetic testing for so many things, since it's possible, it's so important to do, and for your family, it's crucial. Well, we only have a few minutes left, but I had one last question for you. We wear pink every October. We see so much pink and ribbons and everything like that, and so awareness is growing around breast cancer in particular. But what else would you like to see happen in the future?
I really want people to get tested, mammograms. I can't tell you how many people don't, they tell me, oh, I don't have time, or "Ugh, I don't want to know." And it just, I mean, my situation, I know somebody who had that and is no longer with us. Actually, an HP colleague of mine. And she's very dear to me. And it is one of those things where please, please get tested. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't take long, and it's once a year. And just to have that track record of on file, if you will, of a picture of what's going on inside, it matters a lot. And I know it's scary and it's not supposed to feel easy, but the alternative is terrible. It's terrible for you, it's terrible for your family. And I really wish we would normalize mammograms.
Well, that's all the time that we have today. Allison, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this.
I really appreciate the forum and the opportunity and the safe place here. And I appreciate the audience's interest. And, you know, you also never know what someone's going through in general. It doesn't have to be breast cancer. And so I think about kindness. I know it sounds cliche, but you just don't know. And I hid this forever. No one ever was aware. And I guess it's also a reminder to say, we don't know what people are going through.
Thank you. And thank you to our Ad Age digital team, Anna Sakula, Phil Carpinella, Anicia Juarez, and Lauren Chiardio. Thanks to everyone for watching.